All right, we are here today with Christopher Russell, author of Divinity's Twilight. I believe there's an apostrophe S in there, but my brain could be fitzing on that.
Oh, you've got it right.
Yes, success! I'm having a Tuesday. Anyways, tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're working on at the moment now that your book is sort of in the waiting for recognition from various platforms stage.
That's a wonderful way to put it. So I'm Christopher Russell. I primarily write fantasy and science fiction, more on the fantasy side. The science fiction is typically my technology elements. I love to deal with steampunk and airships and see what happens when you take magic and you use it as the source of whether it's fuel or gas or gunpowder, basically substitutes.
Okay.
And so I have with me, this is the Divinity's Twilight that we were talking about, the paperback version.
Yeah.
And we have our two leads there on the front. This one has the subtitle Rebirth, and every single title in the series is going to have an R title. So we'll wait and see what the next one is. It's currently in the beta reading stage. And I have a few people taking a look at that for a release probably around the same time next year, early summer to fall.
Very cool.
And so this one right here, paperback version, is about 500 pages, give or take. Has an appendix, has these fantastic maps in the front.
Maps. I'm super
Every
fond.
Every single fantasy series has to have maps.
Yes, absolutely.
And so there at the top, you have the southern portion of the continent, and then the focus of the first book, which is the Kingdom of Dalmatia. And so there's going to be events that take place at different parts, or interludes and interstices that are going to take you to other parts of the world. But that's the focus. And then, like I mentioned before, the cover was done by Chris McGrath. Have you ever heard of? Yes, the father of urban fantasy art.
Yeah, sure.
I went out, and because I loved all his work on Mistborn Era 2 and the Dresden Files.
Yeah.
And so I went out on the lark and asked him if he'd do the cover, and he accepted, much to my surprise. So great things. Always take a chance.
Right.
This is intended to be a long-running series. This is my through line. Goal is to release a title every year in it. Again, like I said, it's going to begin with R, so you're going to have Divinity's Twilight something. I picked the title for the second book. I'm just not dropping that yet. That'll be another interview.
Oh, well, we'll hold off on that one for a while. Okay.
And so I'm touching up the final story arc to that. The goal right now is for that book to be maybe another third longer than this one. So you have 500 pages. We're looking at about 700 pages for that book.
Okay.
I'm also working on an Asian fantasy work in progress at the same time. My goal is to set it in the same universe, but in a different place with new characters. And so there'll eventually be story threads that start combining. For example, there is a short story that I've written that's eventually going to either go into a Divinity's Twilight anthology, or it's going to be just released separately. There's 3 short stories that are free on my website right now, but none of them have this character. But he pops up in the prologue to the work in progress that I'm working on. So all these little Easter eggs.
The threads that come together in the universe, those are the best parts of creating a fantasy world, because you can do so much.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. So you've got magic and you've got steampunk elements, and now I've seen that slightly more frequently than in the past, but it's still fairly new-ish, because technically steampunk falls under the sci-fi half of the speculative fiction genre, which has like 20 different subgenres. Besides the point. Anyways,
the one that uses magic is typically called arcane punk, right? Have you heard of that? This is getting more specific.
But I haven't seen anything that describes itself as just arcane punk.
Because it's too little known. You want to market yourself as one of the bigger categories.
Yeah, marketing is always fun, and they don't tend to keep up with current trends. It takes a while to cycle through the system.
About a month ago, I heard the term new adult. I had never heard that before, because you had young adult and you have adult, and now they're trying to put something right in the middle, even though the young adult audience has aged up to adult and is still reading young adult.
Yes, I've seen that a lot, where the new adult, I don't even remember what the age specification is. It's like early to mid 20s, I think. is the general idea. I'm not sure.
Hmm.
But I've seen a lot of people writing new adult and marketing that way, and I'm not entirely sure what the genre is actually meant to be, because young adult has, of course, its own tropes, and
Hmm.
adult fiction is just, well, there's, stuff that you don't want kids to read.
Hmm.
So, okay. Anyways, back to your
I think I
world, fantasy
interrupted a
world.
question thread.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure I finished the question. I was gonna
Steampunk.
ask the steampunk and the magic system, how it actually works without too much spoilage of the novel, because that would be bad.
So I don't consider this spoilers at all. So my system is called MagTech. That you take magic, you take technology, you ram them together. I believe there was something in Beowulf that was like that. The words that combine. I'd have to look up the specific term. But so MagTech uses a resource called Lyrium, and
Hmm.
Lyrium is much like uranium but cleaner. So you have some sort of nuclear crystal or resource that gives off energy. It's not going to pollute anything. It's not going to poison anyone. And
Right.
so their industrial revolution in my world was a lot better than ours. That you didn't have all the damage to the environment. That there was tons of magic battles in the past where people were using cataclysmic spells and things that ripped the fabric of the universe and that shore great
Oh boy.
ravines in the land and raised mountains and depressed valleys. But that damage is separate from what they've done with their technology. They've actually been very good about using clean technology.
Uh-huh.
And MagTech enables them to create thermal, electrical, and various other sources of energy because of the ambient manair, which is essentially the magical element in this world that permeates nature, the environment, people, blood,
Hmm.
what have you. And it sucks it in from the atmosphere, multiplies it, and then gives it back. But the crystal gradually degrades because of this process. This is my engineering background coming in. And so they
Okay, sure.
take this crystal and they can use it for light. You can walk around holding in your hand and use as a lantern. You can stick it into a power plant and have it agitate water or something else and spin turbines, and you can generate electricity that way as opposed to the ways we do it in our world. And then you
Uh-huh.
can also stick it into a same sort of power converter on an airship, which is where we start getting to the steampunk, and it's
Right.
going to allow it to have gravitational repulsion. I call them grav pads that line the bottom of their airships. So rather than
Hmm.
having a blimp or propellers like many other people do steampunks, I have essentially like World War I dreadnoughts or transports flying through the sky without anything above them. They're merely being pushed up by the power of this magical resource.
Very cool. Very cool. And of course, anti-gravitational systems can be used for so many different things in future
Mm-hmm.
expeditions.
And so there's a whole lot of anachronistic stuff in this world. So they've recently discovered that you can still make gunpowder. And so they have cannons and rifles that they're working their way up through and putting them on these ships. But at the same time, you have these massive vessels that are floating through the sky. So people running around with swords, rifles, chainmail, various helmets, things like that. And at the same time, you have these super powered ships. And
Yes. So
and so the mixing of your technological levels, it's a very fantasy thing.
fun. All of the best parts all put together.
And as you can
Yes.
see from the cover, our two main characters, Valen Metellus and Celeste Farkos, that they're wearing very Napoleonic era uniforms. That
Mhm.
is where the Kingdom of Dalmatia, that's like their average tech level is somewhere in World War One. But I like the very Napoleon outfits. And
Sure.
so the red and the blue and the different themes for the uniforms is what they've gone with. And then
Uh-huh.
each of the main nations has their own color coordination.
Right.
That way they don't
Right.
shoot each other, right?
Useful thing, the not shooting your allies, etc., etc.
I
Yeah.
always wondered watching shows like Vikings, where maybe they have paint on their shield that allows them to tell each other apart, but they don't look like they're dressed any differently. So how do you know you're not stabbing Fred from the far side of town that you've never seen before?
Because the director made it so. I have many problems with television shows about logic. It's very frustrating. But then, I mean, there's a certain amount of disbelief that one must hold on to, etc., etc.
Absolutely.
But fantasy books, on the other hand, I find actually talk about things like logic, which is interesting. I wonder if the television will ever catch up to the place where the books are at. Just
Well, the
hopefully.
thing with television is that you're able to say a whole lot more because of the visuals that you're getting. And I assume that most directors think that people are going to pick up things and they don't because you're just being flashed really quickly with whatever the information is. In that case, they might think it's superfluous that if one side lines up on this side of the valley and that side lines up on the cliffs on the other side, that they're opposite sides. We only need to follow our heroes through this, and everybody knows who the heroes are. Everyone else is going to stab who they're supposed to stab.
Yeah, but reality says no.
Yeah.
Oh well. Many problems with television. That's why I read more than I do the television shows. Anyways, okay, so tell us a little bit about the plot of your book. I want to know more besides just the technology, although that's frankly pretty fun. But I don't want to spoil it because I need to actually read the book.
Okay, so I'm not going to give away anything that the back cover doesn't give away.
Right.
So we're going to start off 700 years before the story proper. And at this time, it's a very tumultuous era that, because of deals that mortals are not aware of, the gods of their world, the seven Vanir, essentially demigods, and the creator that made them have vanished for parts unknown. They've withdrawn, left people to
Oops.
their own devices. And in this era of chaos, warlords are fighting against each other. Even within races, you have civil wars. There's seven different races. It's not based on skin color, eye color. It's based more along the lines of your traditional fantasy, but I put a twist on it. That you have Terrans, which are the human stand-ins. You
Right.
have Hues, which are hulking giants with four arms. You have Sylph, which are your elegant magic users. Very flowing, graceful outfits, very similar to elves, except for that they're better at using their blood than anyone else, so they can change the structures of their organs at will. They can even sprout wings and
That's
fly, and then put
pretty
them away
fantastic.
again once they're done.
Yeah.
There's the Moravi, very reptilian. They can run on all fours. They can mimic other races standing on two. And then they're very capable at manipulating their bone structure. They can eject it and use it as weapons, or even if they needed to support a structure, they could use it as like a screw or a bolt.
Ow.
Yes, very painful. You
But
have the Trilith. Oh, go ahead.
no, no, 'cause I was just gonna say it's very cool, but ow.
The Trilith insectoid, they tend to congregate in their hives. They are telepathically linked to each other, and so everything
Mhm.
feeds back into a central consciousness. You have the Vladisvar, they're very martial. They're focused on being mercenaries, and they have an interesting, very karmic balance to their spirituality that all the good and the bad that they do has to balance out, or things are going to go crazy, that the world's going to fall apart. They tattoo their bodies and graft metal plates and weapons to themselves, both as part of their religion and part of improving their battle prowess. And
Mhm.
then who have I missed? I've missed somebody. I'm sure. Oh, the Eliod, because I always forget the Eliod because they're almost as withdrawn as the gods themselves because they're the longest lived and they had the closest relationship to them, and they were sort of
Right.
the intermediaries. But their cool thing is that they're very ethereal. That
Mhm.
their bodies are translucent. That they have wispy sensory appendages that can perform all the senses of other people,
Huh.
and they can come out of different parts of their body, mostly from the back, but they can also do it from their arms, their chest, various other different places.
Mhm. Mhm.
So essentially, this is base fantasy races with a twist.
Right. Right. Okay. And so they're all interacting, trying to
Yes.
reestablish some sort of order after all of this chaos. Oh, I'm
Yes.
about to
And
be excited.
so, no, you've got the right idea. So, and in this era of chaos, where all these different groups are not getting along, that they have differences from before this, that the history does eventually go into. But three Terran brothers, essentially humans, as I say, discovered a resource more powerful than Illyrium called Illyriite. And Illyriite is Illyrium that doesn't break down. And they use this to make their magic even more powerful and to begin to bring the other races together. Originally, they were focused on a dream of peace that involved compromise and improving learning and knowledge. However, there were people who didn't agree with this, and the eldest brother was eventually corrupted by the power of his stone and decided that when everybody else was subjugated, when the rest of the world bowed down to a single ruler, him, that there would naturally be peace. His other two brothers and the rest of the world united against him and defeated him at the Battle of Harmuth that's discussed on the back cover and discussed in the prologue. And so then we flash forward 700 years. The brothers' final scheme, when he was defeated, his final scheme to destroy the world at his undoing failed. The cover talks about it. It's called the Oblivion Well, an attempt to use the power of the Illyriite to eradicate all life in the world and start again from zero.
Okay.
And so technology's advanced, that these three nations founded by the brothers are very much still in conflict, that the two larger nations, Sarkonia and Raban, they've basically been at war for 700 years with the Kingdom of Dalmatia, a very Switzerland-esque nation, attempting to balance them so that neither side got an advantage and was able to conquer the continent. The other races are watching on or dealing with their own internal strife and struggles, waiting for the war-hungry Terrans to wear themselves out. Because that's very much the human nature, that we're going to use force to put a stop to whatever strife or problems that we have. And that's the world we open onto with our military cadet protagonists that are going to school in the Kingdom of Dalmatia. They're learning to be officers. They think that they're going to be taking their roles, going off to command their units during an era of peace. We see their final graduation, and everything's going to be hunky-dory. But then a blast from the past, an ancient evil that wasn't as sealed as everybody thought it is, reemerges and takes side in this conflict.
Ooh, I love it when history causes problems.
Yes. Basically, that's the tagline for the series. What if the heroes of legend didn't save the world, but only delayed the inevitable? That essentially the brothers and those who fought with them at Harmuth didn't do what they needed to do to save the world.
Oh, that'll be fun. Yeah, that's going to be, very many things that could go wrong. I mean, things that could go right too, but I like
and
things.
So that was the 5-minute elevator pitch. I know these are supposed to be 30 seconds.
I'm not actually in an elevator, so it doesn't matter.
Everybody has so much context for their story threads.
Well, they're kind of important. So, yeah, okay. How do you keep track of all your threads? Because you've got many centuries of history to deal with here.
So there are fun stories surrounding this. The one that I always like to tell is that I had this kicking around in my brain for about 7 or 8 years. I started writing it during my second year of undergrad engineering. So you can use that to place my age. It's in the back of the book anyway, but I started thinking about it then, and it was in the middle of a thermodynamics lecture, which explains why thermal energy is an important derivative of Illyrium. But I flipped over my professor's handout and I started scribbling the rough drafts of those maps that a professional took and made them all pretty. But I think that I still have the original versions kicking around on Facebook. But I doodled that in class. And so the geographic boundaries and the topography was the start of my world, that I wanted everybody to have their particular place on the map. And that was going to influence what they were good at or their outlook on the world. It's very much like the foundation of our own civilization, that everybody congregated around rivers. If you had a river, you were going to be fertile, that you were going to have agriculture.
Right.
And so that was the foundation of my world. And I quickly wrote a prologue and I wrote 2 more chapters. And then I got swamped with my engineering and I did not pick up the project again for another 4 or 5 years. And once I did that, I spent a summer of mowing lawns, that every time I would go out and mow the lawn, I would think about the book and I would plot it. And so the entire, basically half of this first novel was plotted while I was mowing lawns, just keeping it in my head. And until that time, I didn't write anything down. At which point I realized that this is an epic fantasy. It's going to get out of control. I'm going to forget things. So I then went and got a notebook. And so I still have the original notebook sitting here. It's very crinkly. All the pages are falling apart and everything, but all the different writing in there. And then eventually I used up that notebook and I started to get afraid, well, what if I lose this? What if it burns up in a fire? All those freak things that you have to be cautious and wary about. People would say that you're paranoid, but it's always good to plan. So I digitized all those notes.
Paranoia is rather normal these days.
Yes. But so I digitized all those notes onto my computer, and then I started recording on my phone. Then that phone broke, and I had to quickly get all the notes off of that. And it was almost a miracle that my phone, the screen was failing. It was flickering. You could see it fading away. It's like last gasp of breath coming out into the atmosphere. And so I got the last bit off just before it died. And then my next phone died. Like 6 months later, it's same thing. The screen cracked and the screen started dying. And I thought to myself, well, I just need to take better care of my phones. But I managed to got all my notes off of these phones before they died. And so that was just like amazing. The universe telling me, you don't need to forget this stuff. You won't remember it anyway. But no, so I keep track. I'm very much a pantser or a discovery writer, to use the traditional terms. But I take notes like an architect, that whenever I think of something, I put it into my phone. And then when I start a chapter, I'll take all the notes and I'll move it into a new document. And so there's no cohesive storyline. There's no cohesive, this comes first, then this, then this. But I will go through and say, this is a good idea. I don't have space for this. This is going to make it unwieldy. This is awesome. And then I put all those things back into my brain and I write the chapter.
Yeah. Okay. Sounds like fun. Though with 500 pages at the current paperback size, I'm sure you're having problems with many notes trying to intertwine and reorganize themselves. Should be fun with two.
So yes, that does come back to being a pantser, but so I've plotted out all the main events down the line. Where I lose interest is if I start plotting out the details that. So whether it's a specific character's development, what they do in a scene, how the action plays out, that's where I get my excitement.
Yeah. Okay. Sure. Huh.
Yes. Another funny story related to that is that this book was originally only a third of my original novel. This was supposed to be a trilogy to begin with. And so I started off and everything begins expanding. You figure out who your characters are, who's going to be important, who's going to live, who's going to die. And as I did that, I realized, wow, I can't fit this all into a single book. Otherwise, it's going to be 2,000 pages and it's going to be double the length of a Stormlight Archive or Wheel of Time entry. And so I had to start cutting things up. And so the original event that has been spinning around in my mind that I'm really excited to get to, that was as everyone says, the original plot point that they developed all the other plot points around, that's now at the end of book 3.
Oh.
That was supposed to be the end of book 1. But don't worry, everything's still exciting.
That's fantastic. Yeah, the important bits, we'll get to them eventually. Yep. That's impressive.
So to expand my skill set, I'm actually trying to do the Asian work in progress, the standalone. I'm trying to do as an architect. That I've planned the entire magic system, all the key points. I have decided on my 4 viewpoint characters that are going to carry the story. I've determined what their character arcs are going to be. And I hope that I haven't removed enough of the thrill for this.
Sure. And does that feel any different in terms of actually the finished, semi-finished, since it's a work in progress product?
It has. Yeah. For the chapters that I've done, I kept it down to big bullet points that needed to occur within them. And so all of the character beats, how their personality manifests, is still up to the flow, up to whatever strikes me at the moment.
Sure. Of course, you've gone through all of this work, and then we get into your book is out. It's very pretty. It's very exciting. And marketing.
Oh yes, grr, marketing.
I think it is every author's nemesis, except possibly some of the big name traditionally published authors who already have the marketing done for them.
Well, I've actually heard some rumors on that front that unless you're like a Brandon Sanderson or a Jim Butcher or something
Sure.
along those lines, that the traditional publishing companies don't put all that much effort into you, that they wait to
No,
see how you sell
that,
and then
that's
they'll
accurate.
start putting the dollars in.
Yeah, that's accurate. It's
Mhm.
the ones who have already proven themselves, they get the extra budget attached to it, which I think is a little bit backwards because the marketing for them already exists. Why
Mhm.
would you put more money into that if you've got other people whose marketing doesn't
It's
exist
generating it.
yet?
And it's always made no sense to me because if you focus on a bestsellers market, when those bestsellers age out and eventually pass away, you're not going to have anything to replace them with. You have to be
Right,
nourishing the next generation.
right. But to be fair, the traditional published world moves extremely slowly. They're
Very
not
true.
there yet. The indie world seems to move. I mean, part of that's the rapid release, but they seem to move a lot faster in terms of trends and just different varieties, I guess. And I
Uh,
can't quite figure out why.
mhm. Because I'm small press and because I'm writing these big door stoppers, I'm somewhere in
Yeah,
between. So I'm having to
yeah.
figure out what works on the traditional side for your marketing and then what works on the indie side. That I'm taking all the social media aspects and trying to combine them with, well, this is at best a yearly release. How do we compromise on the two and keep people excited about future content? How do we keep the news flowing?
hmm You have twice as much work then, because the indie world marketing works rather differently than the traditional world
Mhm.
marketing. So I wish you all the best with that. And also, how? That's ah. Then
Mhm.
again, marketing is my nemesis, so I know
Because
nothing.
I've noticed so far with all the people that I went to find out and review is that they're comparing me to traditional. Well, part of this is my own marketing tag that I said this is similar to a Stormlight entry or Brandon Sanderson, but they're
Mhm.
comparing me to his works and to traditionally
Okay.
published works. So it's an interesting dynamic. You're
Huh.
able to get a little bit of the best of both worlds because indies still view me as an indie, and some traditionally published view me as a traditionally published.
There's got to be some sort of irony there, some sort of law against that much irony. But then again, I don't actually know.
It's like it's your book has split personality disorder.
Yeah. Oh, that would be highly entertaining to
It would be
actually.
an Edgar Allan Poe, an unreliable narrator, which is a concept I love.
Well, the
Just that
unreliable narrators. No, the unreliable narrator causes so much trouble because can you actually believe what has happened?
out.
No. But if you
That's
don't
that's
believe
one
what has happened, then problems.
that's one of the cruxes of my story that you're going to hear the same events. It's going to occur, and then you're going to hear it retold several times, and you have to ask yourself which is the true sequence of events.
Oh,
Mhm.
yes. Ah, okay. So a bit of mystery in there, which is super fun. Yep.
Mhm.
Ooh. Ooh, I like that. That'll be great. Okay. So for writery types, getting into your extraordinarily multi-threaded, I guess, if we're going to go computer science world, book out there, then what are traps that they should avoid? And this can be either in reading your book or in writing something similar.
Okay, so the trap to avoid is like with many people, I went back and rewrote my prologue in the first few chapters once the book was done so that the story threads begun at the beginning would make sense at the end, that everything
Mhm.
would connect. And so the caveat that I give to everyone is you can skim the prologue, but because it's somewhat long, but the prologue is all the events that you need to know and all the little history tidbits and mystery and enigmas that are going to carry through the rest of the series. Everything introduced in the prologue has a purpose. And I've had
Ah,
people say two things about it. They say that the extended battle sequence and everything that goes along with it is really interesting and it's engaging, but they also say that it's long. And so what I tell people is it's similar to the four false starts of the Way of Kings, that you're going
Okay.
to enjoy it, but you're going to be in one person's head for a number of pages, a long time.
Sure. Sure. I
Because
mean, if it's relevant though, then
I
yes.
wanted to take care of the past threads up front, because where you
Mhm.
cut off, I'm very strategic about where that scene cuts off and how much you're getting from that person.
Okay.
Hmm.
Okay. Good to know. But then I always read the prologues. I'm terrible. People say, "Oh, yeah, just skip the prologue."
Oh,
But
no.
it's there.
That's all the framing. And then for my work in progress, my prologue is 2 pages that I went and did the complete opposite thing. But it's still framing. The exact amount of framing occurs in both. One is framing for a series, one is framing for a standalone, and that's the way I view it.
Okay. That makes perfect
Mhm.
sense. Huh. Huh. Yeah, there's a bit of controversy about prologues, and I still don't understand why. Because if someone took the time to write the prologue, then theoretically it's important.
Mhm. And if you didn't want to have a prologue, you would just call the prologue chapter one, and people would see
Right,
it as important suddenly.
right, right. So why is it that the word prologue indicates, yeah, skip?
Mhm. As many other people have said to me, it's just a story told from a different angle, that you're getting somebody's perspective that you're not going to be getting the rest of the story.
Okay, but again, with modern fantasy, that's fairly common to have point of view
Yes,
characters
exactly.
that you only see for a short period of time.
Mhm. The stigma seems to be more in basically how quick you can get material to the reader. And I've heard a number of indie authors say that's why they don't like prologues. That you want to get people in really quickly, you want to get them hooked, and then you want to get them to the next book.
That seems counterintuitive to me.
Well, again, that's just what different people have said. Mhm.
No, no, I can understand the argument. It just seems that there are many other pieces that would go into the creation of a prologue, because even if you're trying to get someone into the series, into the next book, etc., there's still important information in that section.
Mhm.
But then I'm apparently not the average reader, so I can't actually answer
I've
properly.
never met a reader personally, just in my day-to-day life, that doesn't like prologues. So it seems to work for the people I know.
Well, then there you go.
Mhm.
Problem solved. I mean, to be fair, if they're getting into your book, then the expectation is that they're going to be things that need to be explained or presented because there's a lot going on.
Mhm. You
Okay,
have to
fun.
follow those either character or plot or world building threads to carry you through the rest of the narrative.
Right,
Mhm.
right. Very fun. Okay. Hmm. Well, I want to ask more about your standalone piece, but we're just about out of time, so that'll be next interview.
Okay. I can hit you with a few quick pointers. Magic system based on some sort of mechanical engineering principle. It's going to take place on a different world, and it's going to be some combination of Chinese and Japanese feudal elements. That's going to be the political hierarchy and the society that it's set
Interesting. Ooh, feudal elements. That should be fun.
in.
Okay, good to know. I will keep an eye out for all of those things. In the meantime, is there anything else you'd like to add, writing related or otherwise?
So the ebook is currently on sale. Physical copies won't be out in stores until September 22nd. You can get both versions through my website, ChristopherRussellAuthor.com. So the name that you're going to see attached to this video, add author to the end. Russell is two S's, two L's, as I always tell people. That's going to have more information about the series. It's also going to have links to 3 different short stories. You can either read them directly on the website, or you can use the download links to bring them to your e-reader. That is going to be through Story Origin, so it's going to require an email subscription. You can subscribe to my newsletter. I put that out twice a month, and that's going to have information about all my works and sales and releases. As EG mentioned at the beginning of the interview, the book is currently participating in All Authors Cover of the Month contest. This is the last week. You can vote for the cover, which is currently in 5th place. up through Saturday. It's going to require you to make an all author account, but then you're going to be able to access all of all authors features, which are great for authors and also good for readers. They give you a lot of information. And then the other thing, like I said, it's on sale at 1,800 ebook retailers currently. The principal ones being Amazon, Barnes and Noble, Bookshop.org, Books a Million. But with Amazon especially, and I think the other retailers have followed suit, it's currently on sale for $5.99. And look for more promotional information later in July. I'm going to be doing something then.
All right. And actually, by the time this video goes out, the paperback should be available because I have a backlog. Yeah. All right. Well, it has been great fun talking with you. I'm very interested in this magical system and all of the complexities that come along with all of the history and technology, and it sounds fun.
Thank you.
There's that engineering background again, so. That engineering background, I can tell it shows up with all of the pieces. Sort of, okay, let's fit this together, and yeah.
Yes, let's get all the gears and get them turning. Just give it a push.
Thank
you so much. This has been a wonderful conversation. I've really enjoyed myself.
Yeah. Well, have a great day. I assume it's still daylight wherever you are.
Yes, I'm in Virginia.
Oh, okay. So yes, still daylight.
That's natural background.
I have no natural light. It is raining, so I'm okay with it.
Oh, my problem is that I have 4 Shelties, and so whenever you send them out, you have to dry them off with all that fur when you bring them back in.
Oh, yeah, that one's pretty bad. My dog just doesn't like the rain in general, which is a little ironic because she's Scottish.
We can talk about the Shelties next time. 3 of them are puppies, and they're named after book characters, so that's fun in and of itself. And their personalities line up perfectly. It's uncanny.
That's great. That's great. All right, well, have a great day, and I shall talk with you at some point. And I'll make sure to put all of the link description. Hold on, I got this. Words are a thing. Links to your website and whatnot in the description because I can talk.
Perfect. Wonderful. Thank you so much, E.G. This has been awesome.
All right. Yeah. Cheers.